Hello, I'm Peter. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. I must tell you, if you choose to skip tonight's episode, you might find yourself truly regretting it. We are about to uncover secrets of endurance and ingenuity that have been buried under centuries of ice, details so vivid and stories so human that they might change the way you look at your own comfort forever. Tonight, we're stepping back through the centuries to a place where cold wasn't just discomfort. It was a living presence, a force that shaped every breath, every moment, every choice. We're going to a medieval castle in northern Europe sometime around the year 1340 during the onset of what historians now call the Little Ice Age. Winters were growing harsher, nights stretched longer, and inside these massive stone fortresses, survival itself became an art form. Forget the firelit chambers Hollywood sold you. Forget the romantic notions of knights resting peacefully after glorious battles. The truth is far more fascinating and far more human. These castles, built to withstand armies and siege weapons, were also elaborate machines designed for one crucial purpose: keeping their inhabitants alive through the brutal darkness of a northern winter. In a world without central heating, without electricity, without any of the thousand conveniences we take for granted, how did a knight actually sleep when temperatures inside his own bedroom could drop below freezing? How did dozens, sometimes hundreds of people survive the night in a structure made entirely of stone that acted like a massive refrigerator, absorbing cold and holding it deep within its walls? Before we begin this journey together, if you're finding comfort in these quiet explorations of the past, take just a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. But only if these stories genuinely bring you peace. I create these long-form histories because I believe there's something profoundly calming about understanding how our ancestors lived, how they adapted, how they found warmth even in the coldest darkness. And I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from tonight? What time is it where you are as you prepare to drift off? Drop a comment below. There's something beautiful about knowing we're scattered across the globe, yet connected by these whispers from the past. Now then, dim the lights if you haven't already. Pull your blanket a little closer. Adjust your pillow. Let the modern world fade away. Because tonight, you're not just learning about history, you're living it. You are a knight returning to your castle after weeks in the field. Your body aches. Your mind is heavy with concerns about battles yet to come. And as the winter sun disappears behind the frozen hills, you must prepare for the long, cold night ahead. Let's ease into the stone silence together. The hoof beats slow as you approach the outer walls. Your destrier, that massive warhorse bred for battle, feels the change first. His breath comes out in great clouds of white vapor, crystallizing instantly in the frigid air. It's late afternoon, but already the light is dying. This far north winter days are brief, stolen things. By the 4th hour after noon, darkness is gathering like a physical weight. The colors of the world have faded to a palette of charcoal slate and the faint, glowing amber of the watchtower's torches. You notice a small, brave robin perched on a frozen branch, its red breast a defiant spark of warmth against the grey. It reminds you that even in the harshest medieval times, life persists with a stubborn, quiet grace. You find yourself smiling a rare, weary expression at the sight of the bird puffing its feathers to stay warm. It's a tiny mirror of your own struggle. You've been away for 3 weeks, a border skirmish that turned into a grinding campaign through frozen forests. You lost men, good men. Their faces still burn behind your eyes when you close them. But now you're home, if home is what you can call this fortress of stone and duty. You reach forward, your gauntleted hand resting on the destrier's neck. His coat is thick, shaggy with his winter growth, and damp with the sweat of exertion despite the freezing air. You feel a surge of affection for this animal. He is not merely a tool of war. He is a companion who has carried you through sleet and ambush without faltering. You can feel the heat of his massive muscles beneath the skin, a living furnace that has kept your legs warm during the long ride. In the harshness of medieval life, the bond between human and animal was not just sentimental, it was symbiotic. You depend on his strength. He depends on your care. You whisper a quiet word of praise to him, a softness in your voice that your soldiers rarely hear. He flicks an ear back, acknowledging the sound, his large, dark eye rolling back to catch a glimpse of you. There is a mutual understanding here, a shared fatigue. As you cross the drawbridge, you see a group of stable boys engaged in a snowball fight, their laughter ringing out like bells in the crisp air. One boy, distracted, takes a face full of snow just as you pass, and his wide-eyed shock, followed by a toothy grin, brings a moment of lightness to your heavy heart. Even here, in a fortress of war, childhood finds a way to play. It is a reminder that the winter survival skill of the heart is just as important as the one for the body, the ability to find joy when the world is frozen solid. The porter recognizes you even through the gathering gloom. The outer gate groans, open chains clanking against frozen metal. The sound echoes across the courtyard, and you feel it in your chest. Everything here is stone. Stone walls, stone towers, stone earth beneath your horse's hooves. In summer, these stones held coolness, pleasant relief from the sun. But winter has reversed everything. Now the stones are vast reservoirs of cold, holding the chill deep in their hearts, the way a frozen lake holds winter beneath its surface. You dismount in the courtyard. Your squire, a boy of 14 named Thomas, rushes forward to take your horse. His nose is red from cold. His breath comes quick. You can see he's been waiting probably for hours, watching from one of the narrow arrow slits that serve as windows in this place. That's loyalty. That's the bond that keeps a castle functioning. Everyone depends on everyone else when the cold comes. My lord, Thomas says, his voice cracking slightly, still becoming a man. The fire's been kept high in your chamber. Your wife asks that you join her once you've settled. You hand the reins to Thomas, but you pause. Rub him down well, Thomas, you say, gesturing to the horse. And warm mash tonight. No cold water until he's cooled. You wait for the boy to nod, needing to ensure the animal is cared for before you attend to your own comfort. It is a small act of mercy, but in a world that can be so cruel, these small mercies define a man's character. You watch for a moment as Thomas leads the beast toward the stables, the horse's hooves clopping rhythmically on the cobblestones, steam rising from his flanks like a retreating spirit. The stables will be warm, filled with the scent of hay and the heat of other bodies. Part of you envies the simplicity of the animal's night food warmth and the absence of worry. In the corner of the courtyard, an old hound grey about the muzzle stretches near the kitchen vents, soaking up the stray wisps of heat. He gives a low, muffled woof as you pass, more a greeting than a warning. You chuckle, imagining the dog has a better understanding of the hierarchy of heat than most lords. In this medieval documentary of daily existence, even the dogs are masters of seeking out the golden threads of warmth. Your wife, Margaret. In your absence, she's been managing this entire household. The servants, the stores, the endless decisions about how much fuel to burn, how much food to distribute, which rooms to heat, and which to abandon to the cold. Medieval life wasn't divided simply between men's work and women's work. It was survival shared. You picture her face now, not the idealized beauty of a painting, but the real, enduring beauty of a partner. The fine lines around her eyes, from squinting in low light, the strength in her hands. She carries the emotional weight of the castle. While you fight battles with steel, she fights the battles of scarcity and morale. She is the one who ensures the laundress has salve for her cracked hands. She is the one who sits with the steward to stretch the grain stores so that even the lowest scullery maid does not go hungry. Her compassion is the mortar that holds this community together as much as the stone holds the walls. You enter the main hall and the air changes from the sharp crystalline blue of the outdoors to a hazy golden orange. The smell of roasted venison and spiced ale hits you like a physical embrace. It's the scent of home, earthy, rich and thick with the promise of replenishment. The fire in the great hearth is a roaring beast, its flames dancing in shades of crimson and saffron, casting a flickering glow on the faces of the weary men-at-arms. You nod to Thomas and make your way toward the great oak door of the keep. Your armor weighs on you. 40 pounds of steel plates, mail padding. You've worn it for so long, it's become a second skin. But now, finally home, you feel every ounce. Your shoulders ache. Your hips are bruised where the cuisses sit. And underneath it all, you're cold. Not the surface cold of winter air, but a deeper cold that seeped into your bones over weeks of sleeping in tents under stars, with only campfires and your cloak for warmth. The door opens. The transition is immediate and disorienting. Outside, the vast empty cold of the courtyard, the sky, the wind. Inside, the contained complicated cold of the castle interior. It's warmer, yes, but only by degrees. The air inside doesn't bite quite as sharply, but it's heavy, thick with wood smoke from fires burning somewhere deeper in the structure. Thick with the smell of bodies of wool, of the tallow candles that provide light in the perpetual gloom. This is your world now, this maze of stone and shadow. And tonight, like every winter night, you'll have to navigate its challenges to reach something approaching rest. You climb the spiral staircase toward your chamber. The steps are worn smooth by generations of feet. In some places, the center of each step dips noticeably carved away by centuries of passage. Your boots echo on the stone. The sound bounces off the curved walls, multiplying, creating the illusion that someone else is climbing above you or below you. It's unsettling until you remember it's just architecture. Just stone playing tricks with sound. There is a haunting beauty in this weariness. You run a gloved hand along the central pillar of the staircase. The stone is polished slick, not by tools, but by the thousands of hands that have pivoted around this turn before you. Fathers, grandfathers, ancestors whose names are etched in the chapel crypts below. You feel a sudden, profound connection to them. They too climbed these stairs with heavy hearts and frozen feet. They too sought the solace of a warm bed. This continuity of human experience softens the hardness of the rock. You are walking in their footsteps, quite literally fitting your boot into the depressions their boots made. It is a humble realization you are but a temporary tenant in this enduring mountain of stone. The staircase is a spiral of shadows, lit only by the occasional torch that sputters and hisses. You pass a small window slit and see a single star, bright and needle-sharp, hanging in the velvet black of the sky. It looks so cold, a distant spark in the infinite frost. You shiver, not just from the draught, but from the realization of how small your little pocket of warmth really is. In medieval times, the darkness was not just an absence of light. It was a character in itself, vast and indifferent. There are no windows in this stairwell, only occasional arrow slits so narrow you couldn't fit your hand through them. They were designed that way. Defensive architecture. An invading enemy would have to climb these stairs one at a time, exposed and vulnerable. But the price of that security is darkness. Your eyes struggle to adjust. You keep one hand on the wall, feeling your way up. The wall is cold. So cold your hand goes numb within seconds, even through your glove. This is what people of our time struggle to understand about medieval castles. We imagine them as warm, cozy refuges. We picture the great halls blazing with firelight, everyone gathered in comfort. But the reality was far more complicated. Stone is an incredible material for building fortifications. It's strong, fire-resistant and imposing, but it's also an excellent conductor of cold. Think of it as a giant stone sponge, but instead of water, it drinks the very heat from your skin. Every winter survival skill you possess is tested here. You've learned to walk in the center of the halls, avoiding the radiant bite of the masonry. You've learned that the color of the stone matters. The dark, damp granite feels far more oppressive than the lighter limestone of the upper floors. This medieval documentary of sensation is something you feel in your marrow long before you see it with your eyes. During the Little Ice Age, which was beginning to grip Europe in the 1300s, winter temperatures in northern Europe regularly dropped well below freezing. Historical climate records reconstructed from tree rings and ice cores suggest that average winter temperatures could have been 4 to 6 degrees Celsius colder than they are today. Inside the castle, without modern insulation or heating systems, temperatures often mirrored the outside. Even in the grandest chambers where fires burned throughout the day, the ambient temperature might only reach 50 degrees Fahrenheit. In unheated areas which comprised most of the castle, it could easily drop below freezing. You reach the top of the stairs and emerge into the corridor that leads to your chamber. This hallway is slightly better lit. There are a few tallow candles burning in iron sconces attached to the walls. Tallow rendered from animal fat was the common person's candle. It gave off a flickering, smoky light and smelled vaguely of burned meat. The wealthy used beeswax candles, which burned cleaner and smelled faintly sweet. But even beeswax was precious. You rationed it carefully. As you walk down the corridor, you pass a servant girl, perhaps 12 years old, carrying a basket of linens. She stops and presses herself against the cold stone wall to let you pass, eyes downcast. You pause. She is shivering, her shawl thin and threadbare. You see the redness in her knuckles, the raw skin from scrubbing in cold water. In the strict hierarchy of medieval life, you could walk past without acknowledgement. But the cold is a great equalizer. It strips away pretension. "Go to the kitchen hearth, child," you say gently. "Warm your hands before you continue." She looks up, surprised, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes that warms you more than any fire could. It is a moment of shared humanity. You are the lord of this castle, yet you are both just creatures of flesh and blood, trying to keep the winter at bay. This empathy, this recognition of the suffering of others, is the mark of a true knight, not just prowess in battle, but kindness in the quiet moments. She curtsies quickly, a small smile touching her lips, and you notice she's wearing mismatched woolen socks, one brown one, a faded blue. It's a tiny, whimsical detail that makes you huff a soft laugh. In a world of rigid order, there is always room for the slightly chaotic reality of being human. You watch her scurry away toward the smell of baking bread, her small form disappearing into the amber glow of the distance. The corridor is narrow, maybe 4 feet wide. The ceiling is low vaulted. You can almost touch it with your fingertips. This design was intentional. Smaller spaces were easier to heat. They held warmth better than the vast soaring halls below. But even so, you can see your breath. Each exhalation creates a small cloud that hangs in the air for a moment before dissipating. You pass other chambers. Behind heavy wooden doors, you can hear the sounds of the castle settling into its evening routine. A child crying. A woman's voice low and soothing. The clatter of something dropped. A burst of laughter quickly stifled. This place, for all its stone and military purpose, is alive. Dozens of people live here. Servants, soldiers, family members, craftsmen, and those who've sought refuge within these walls. They're all navigating the same challenge, how to survive the long winter night with dignity and warmth. Your chamber is at the end of the corridor. The door is oak bound with iron. There's no lock. Privacy, as we understand it, didn't really exist in medieval times. Even the lord and lady of the castle often had servants sleeping in their chamber or just outside their door. Security, assistance, companionship. These things mattered more than being alone. You push the door open, the leather hinges creak, and you step into your sleeping space. The room is bathed in a soft, flickering ruby light from the hearth. It feels like stepping into the heart of a great, slow-breathing garnet. The air here is tinged with the scent of dried lavender and the sharp, clean bite of pine resin. It is a sanctuary of color in a world of gray stone. You feel the tension in your shoulders begin to dissolve, replaced by a heavy, welcoming fatigue. It's larger than most rooms in the castle, perhaps 15 feet by 15 feet. The ceiling is vaulted, rising to maybe 12 feet at its peak. There's one window, narrow and tall, designed like all castle windows to let in light while remaining defensible. Right now, the last grey light of day is filtering through. The window is covered with a wooden shutter on the inside, but it hasn't been closed yet. You can feel the draft. Cold air is pouring through the gap between the shutter and the stone frame, streaming down the wall like an invisible waterfall of winter. You look around the room. It is sparse by modern standards, but to you, it is a sanctuary. A wooden chest at the foot of the bed, carved with scenes of the hunt. A high-backed chair near the hearth. A small table with a basin and ewer. But it is the atmosphere that strikes you, a stillness that contrasts with the chaos of the campaign. The stone walls, though cold, feel solid and protective. They are the ribs of the beast that shelters you. You feel a deep, almost primal need to nest here, to reclaim this space from the chill. Against the far wall stands your bed. It's the largest piece of furniture in the room. a massive frame of oak standing on 4 carved posts. The bed is built high off the ground, perhaps 3 feet up. This served multiple purposes. It kept you away from the cold stone floor where the coldest air would settle. It provided storage space underneath for trunks and boxes. And it announced status. The higher your bed, the higher your social standing. Around the bed hang heavy curtains. These aren't decorative. They're essential survival equipment. Made of thick wool or in wealthier households velvet, these curtains can be drawn closed to create a small enclosed space around the bed. When you sleep inside with the curtains drawn, your body heat is trapped. The enclosed space becomes significantly warmer than the surrounding room. Medieval people understood this instinctively. The bed wasn't just furniture. It was a shelter within a shelter, a cave within a cave. You notice Margaret has placed a small embroidered pillow on the chair, a splash of emerald green silk in the firelight. It seems almost too delicate for this heavy stone room, yet it's the most beautiful thing you've seen in weeks. It represents the softness that still exists in your life, the gentle touch that awaits you once the steel is stripped away. This medieval documentary of your life isn't just about the battles. It's about the emerald pillow and the warm fire. The floor is stone covered with rushes and herbs. Fresh ones have been laid recently. You can smell lavender and rosemary mixed with the dried grass. These floor coverings served multiple purposes in medieval life. They provided a slight cushion and insulation from the stone floor. The herbs helped mask the less pleasant smells of daily life before modern plumbing, and they could be easily removed and replaced when they became too soiled or infested with fleas and mites. There's a fireplace in the wall to your left. It's a later addition to the castle. When this tower was first built a century ago, heating would have been provided by a central hearth in the middle of the room, with smoke escaping through a hole in the ceiling. But by your time, fireplace technology has advanced. There's now a proper flue built into the stone wall, carrying smoke up and out through a chimney. The fireplace is burning now. Someone, probably one of the chamberlains, has kept it going all day in preparation for your return. The fire is a companionable presence, popping and crackling as a pocket of sap explodes. It sounds like a tiny celebration. You watch the sparks fly up the chimney, little orange dancers heading out into the cold night. There's a certain humor in it. The fire is trying so hard to heat this massive room like a single candle trying to light the sun. But its effort is heroic nonetheless. But here's what you need to understand about medieval fireplaces. They were terribly inefficient by modern standards. Most of the heat went straight up the chimney. The fire heated the air directly in front of it. But that warm air rose and escaped. Meanwhile, the fire drew cold air from the rest of the room to feed its flames. This created drafts. You could sit close to the fire and feel your front burning hot while your back remained freezing cold. Medieval people joked about this. They invented special curved screens to place behind chairs to trap and reflect heat. But it was never quite enough. You walk to the window and push the shutter closed, sliding the wooden bar across to secure it. Immediately, the stream of frigid air stops. The room becomes slightly warmer, or at least slightly less cold. You can still feel the cold radiating from the stone walls, but it's more bearable now. The firelight flickers, casting enormous shadows. Your own shadow, huge and distorted, dances on the wall. It looks like a giant knight guarding the room, and for a second you find yourself nodding to your own shadow, a silent acknowledgement of your shared duty. Thomas appears in the doorway. He's carrying a brass brazier. It's glowing with hot coals. This is another heat source, portable and precious. Braziers were filled with charcoal or hot coals from the main fire and carried to rooms that needed extra warmth. They were dangerous. They produced carbon monoxide. People died from leaving braziers burning in sealed rooms overnight. But for the evening, while you were still awake, they provided welcome heat. "Where would you like this, my lord?" Thomas asks. "Near the bed," you tell him. "And then help me with this armor." Thomas sets the brazier carefully on the stone floor, positioning it on a flat stone slab to prevent any risk of fire. Then he comes to you and begins the process of removing your armor. As Thomas works on the straps and buckles of your armor, you close your eyes for a moment. The warmth from the fireplace and the brazier is beginning to seep into your awareness. It's not warm, not really. But after weeks of campaigning in frozen forests, this feels like luxury. You think about the science of this cold, though you don't have the vocabulary to describe it the way we would today. You know from experience what happens to stone in winter. Stone doesn't just let cold pass through. It absorbs cold. It holds cold. Touch a stone wall in deep winter, and it feels actively cold, not just neutral. The heat from your hand flows into the stone, and the stone gives nothing back. In medieval times, every soul was a scientist of temperature. You knew that a damp wall was a hungry wall, and a dry one was a friend. This was the ultimate winter survival skill, reading the moods of the castle. The way the frost patterns formed on the mortar could tell you if the night would be merely bitter or truly deadly. You watch a bead of condensation crawl down the stone, reflecting the orange firelight like a tiny liquid jewel. The walls of this castle are 5 feet thick in places. That's thousands upon thousands of cubic feet of stone, all of it holding the cold of winter deep in its heart. During the day, if the sun manages to break through the clouds, it might warm the outer surface of the walls slightly. But that warmth never penetrates. Inside, the walls remain at near freezing temperatures all winter long. This phenomenon creates a psychological effect known as vampiric cold. It feels as though the castle is actively draining the life force from you. Standing in the center of the room, you are a localized heat source in a vacuum of cold. The walls are hungry. This is why the tapestries are so vital. They are not just art, they are shields. As you look at the tapestry depicting the hunt, you notice the fine needlework, thousands of hours of labor by women's hands. It is a labor of love and survival. Every stitch adds density. Every thread adds a microscopic pocket of air. You feel a pang of gratitude for the anonymous hands that wove this protection. In medieval times, art and survival were often the same thing. The colors of the tapestry, deep forest greens, rich burgundies and faded golds, bring a sense of life to the sterile stone. You imagine the women sitting in the solar, their needles flying, their voices rising in song to keep the boredom at bay. Their laughter is woven into these threads as much as the wool. It's a human touch that makes the cold feel less like an enemy and more like a challenge to be met with beauty. What you're experiencing, though you can't name it, is thermal radiation. Your body warm at 98 degrees. Fahrenheit is constantly radiating heat as infrared energy. When you stand near a warm fire, you absorb radiated heat from the flames. But when you stand near a cold stone wall, the opposite happens. Your body radiates heat toward the cold surface, and you lose warmth without even feeling a breeze. This is why medieval people covered their walls. The tapestries you see hanging in the better chambers of the castle aren't just decorative, they're functional insulation. A heavy wool tapestry hung a few inches away from the stone wall creates a pocket of air. That trapped air, warmed slightly by the room and insulated by the woven fibers, acts as a barrier. It dramatically reduces the amount of heat lost through radiation to the cold stone. In your chamber, there are two tapestries. One depicts a hunting scene, nobles on horseback pursuing a white hart through a forest. The other shows a biblical scene, perhaps David and Goliath. The images are faded and the wool is worn in places, but the tapestries still serve their purpose. The walls they cover are noticeably less cold than the bare stone on the other side of the room. Thomas has removed your pauldrons, the shoulder pieces of your armor. He sets them carefully on a wooden stand designed for this purpose. Each piece of armor must be hung or placed properly to prevent rust and damage. Damp air in the castle causes metal to corrode quickly. Every night, someone must check the armor, wipe away condensation, and apply a thin layer of oil. "The moat is frozen again, my lord," Thomas says as he works on the buckles of your breastplate. "Solid enough to walk on. The marshal had men checking the ice this afternoon." You nod. The moat freezing is both a blessing and a danger. It means no one can approach the castle by boat, which eliminates one attack vector. But it also means the moat's defensive value is compromised. An enemy could simply walk across the ice. Throughout the coldest months, guards must keep watch on the frozen moat, ready to break the ice if necessary, or defend against crossing attempts. How thick, you ask? 8 inches, at least. Maybe more near the banks. 8 inches. That's substantial. The kind of cold that produces that much ice isn't a temporary snap. It's a sustained, deep freeze. It means this cold will persist for weeks, possibly months. It means the castle must settle into its winter rhythm fully, conserving fuel, rationing light, sealing off unused wings and towers, consolidating warmth where possible. This is the true grit of medieval life, the ability to endure not just one cold night, but 100 of them in a row. You think of the villages outside the walls, the small huts buried in snow, the families huddled together for warmth. Their struggle is even greater than yours. You feel a surge of protective instinct. Your strength is meant to be their shield, not just in war, but in the face of nature's cruelty. Thomas removes your breastplate. The sudden absence of its weight is startling. You feel lighter, almost unbalanced. Underneath, you're wearing a padded gambeson, layers of linen stuffed with wool or old fabric scraps. It's soaked with sweat from the day's travel despite the cold. Medieval people understood layering instinctively. The gambeson provided cushioning against the armor's weight and chafing, but it also provided insulation. Even after the armor came off, the gambeson held warmth. "Leave the gambeson," you tell Thomas. "I'll wear it under my sleeping robe tonight." Thomas nods. He understands. Every layer matters. He continues removing the leg armor, the greaves and cuisses, kneeling on the rush-covered floor to reach the buckles. You steady yourself with a hand on his shoulder. Looking down at the boy, you notice the way his hair is matted from the helmet he wears during training. He is tired, perhaps more tired than you. You remember your own days as a squire, the endless fetching and carrying the cold that seemed to live permanently in your fingers and toes. You squeeze his shoulder gently, a silent communication of thanks. "You have done well today, Thomas," you say softly. "The armor is well kept." The boy flushes with pride, a little color returning to his pale cheeks. Positive reinforcement is a rare currency in this harsh world, but you spend it when you can. It builds a different kind of warmth loyalty. "My mother sent a fresh batch of ginger cakes, my lord." Thomas adds, his voice hopeful. "I left one on your bedside table. She says it's good for the humors in the frost." You look over and see the small, dark brown cake smelling of earth and spice. It's a humble gift, but it speaks of a world where people still care for one another's comfort. You take a small bite. It's dry, but the ginger bites back with a pleasant heat. It's a tiny, edible fire. Outside, you can hear the wind picking up. It moans through the arrow slits and gaps in the stonework. Medieval castles were not sealed structures. They were riddled with tiny gaps and openings, arrow slits, murder holes, drain holes, ventilation gaps. All of these allowed air movement, which was good for preventing the buildup of smoke and bad air, but terrible for keeping warmth in. On a windy winter night, you could feel drafts everywhere. Candle flames flickered constantly, tapestries swayed, and the cold seemed to creep through the very stones. The wind carries sounds too. The creak of the wooden gate far below in the courtyard. The clang of something metal, perhaps a gate chain or a piece of equipment left out. The distant bark of dogs in their kennels. And something else, a rhythmic sound, footsteps. Those are the guards on the battlements making their rounds. All night long, men will patrol the walls of this castle. They'll watch for threats, yes, but more importantly, they'll watch for fire. Fire was the greatest danger to a medieval castle in winter. Everyone was burning something. Fireplaces, braziers, candles, torches, and everything was wood-wool thatch and other flammable materials. A single spark in the wrong place could kill everyone in their sleep. The guards on watch tonight face brutal conditions. Unlike you, they can't retreat to a chamber and close a door. They must remain outside, walking the walls exposed to the full force of the winter wind. They'll wrap themselves in heavy woolen cloaks lined with fur if they're lucky. They'll keep moving to generate body heat. They'll huddle in the lee of towers during their brief rest periods, perhaps holding their hands over small fires kept burning in iron baskets. You feel a twinge of guilt standing here in your relatively sheltered room while they march in the freezing dark. These men are fathers, brothers, sons. They endure the biting wind so that the household can sleep. You make a mental note to ensure the steward sends up extra rations of hot broth and bread to the guard tower tonight. It is a small gesture, but a necessary one. Humanitarian concern isn't weakness. It's the glue of a feudal society. If they freeze, the castle falls. If they starve, loyalty withers. You are their lord, and their suffering is in a way your failure. This heavy sense of responsibility is as much a part of your daily wear as the steel plate Thomas just removed. You imagine the guards sharing a flask of watered wine, their breaths mingling in the dark, telling crude jokes to pass the time. There is a strange, rugged beauty in that camaraderie. It's the color of survival, not gold or silver, but the deep, earthy brown of shared struggle and the bright, hot red of a beating heart. This medieval documentary of the soul shows that even in the coldest stone, the human spirit is a fire that never quite goes out. Thomas finishes with your leg armor and stands. "Shall I help you into your nightclothes, my lord?" "Yes, and then you can go find your own supper and warmth." He brings you a long robe made of wool. It's thick and heavy, almost like a coat. Wealthy medieval people didn't have pajamas as we know them. Instead, they had special sleeping garments, often just long shirts or robes, sometimes lined with softer fabric or fur. You step into the robe and Thomas helps you pull it on over the gambeson. The layers build up. Linen against skin, padded gambeson wool robe. Each layer traps air and creates insulation. Then, Thomas brings you a nightcap. This is a close-fitting cap made of linen designed to cover your head and ears completely. People of our times sometimes laugh at nightcaps in old illustrations, thinking they look silly. But they were absolutely essential. You lose a tremendous amount of body heat through your head. In a cold chamber, going to sleep without a nightcap was miserable. Your head would be cold all night, and you'd never fully warm up. You catch your reflection in the polished brass of the basin, a fierce knight in a linen cap. You can't help but smirk. War is serious business, but a man in a nightcap is a humble reminder that even heroes have to worry about cold ears. Thomas helps you secure the nightcap, tying the straps under your chin. Then he bows slightly and backs toward the door. Sleep well, my lord. And you, Thomas. Thank you. He slips out, closing the heavy door behind him. You hear his footsteps receding down the corridor, quick and light. Young legs, not yet worn down by years of armor and campaigns. You're alone now. Well, not entirely alone. In a castle, you're never truly alone. On the other side of these walls, separated only by stone, are dozens of other people settling into their own nighttime routines. But for this moment in this chamber, you have privacy. It's a rare thing, a privilege of rank. You walk to the bed and run your hand over the coverings. The top layer is a fur, bare fur, thick and luxurious. It's been in your family for 2 generations, passed down from your grandfather. The bear was killed in the forests to the north, back when those forests were less tamed than they are now. The pelt is enormous, easily covering the entire bed with excess draping over the edges. The texture is coarse under your fingers, the guard hairs stiff, but beneath them lies a dense, woolly undercoat that speaks of nature's own engineering against the cold. You bury your fingers into it for a moment. There is a primal comfort in this. Before castles, before stone humans wrapped themselves in the skins of animals to survive the ice ages. This blanket is a connection to that ancient ancestral struggle. It smells faintly of cedar chests and wood smoke, a scent that signals safety to your brain. The fur is a deep chocolate brown with highlights of silver where the light catches it. It feels alive under your hand, a heavy, silent guardian. You remember your grandfather's stories of the hunt, the bravery required to face such a beast. Now that beast's strength is your protection against the silent hunter that is the winter cold. This is the ultimate winter survival skill, using the gifts of the natural world to survive its harshest moods. Underneath the bear fur are more layers, a heavy wool blanket woven tightly to trap heat. Beneath that, another blanket, this one made of softer wool, perhaps combed from sheep in spring when their winter coats shed. And beneath that, the feather mattress. You appreciate the craftsmanship of the wool. You know the village women who spun this yarn, their fingers dancing over spindles by candlelight. You know the weavers who drove the looms, the rhythmic clack, clack, clack that is the heartbeat of the village economy. This blanket is a winter survival skill made manifest in fabric. The weave is tight to block drafts, yet the fibers are lofty to trap air. It is simple technology, yet perfect. In medieval times, textiles were wealth. A good blanket was worth more than a piece of gold, because gold cannot keep you warm when the fire dies. Feather mattresses were luxury items in medieval times. Most people, even many members of the minor nobility, slept on mattresses stuffed with straw or perhaps wool. But high-ranking nobles could afford feathers. Goose down was best. It was light, incredibly insulating and comfortable. A good feather mattress could last for decades if cared for properly. People mentioned them in wills. They passed them down to children as inheritance. Your mattress is substantial. It's perhaps 6 inches thick when compressed, lying on a grid of ropes strung across the bed frame. These ropes had to be tightened periodically. The phrase "sleep tight" may have originated from this practice. Loose ropes meant a sagging mattress and poor sleep. So servants would tighten the ropes to ensure the mattress remained firm and supportive. You sit on the edge of the bed. The frame creaks slightly. The mattress compresses under your weight, and you can feel the feathers shifting inside their canvas covering. It's not soft like a modern mattress. There's no spring, no foam. But after weeks of sleeping on hard ground, with only a cloak for padding, it feels like heaven. You remove your boots. This is a significant moment. Your boots have been on your feet for hours, maybe days. In winter, you rarely removed them because getting them back on over cold feet was miserable. But now, finally warm enough and safe enough, you can take them off. As you peel off the thick leather and the woolen socks beneath you, inspect your feet in the dim light. They are pale, the skin calloused and scarred from years of marching. You rub the arch of your foot, wincing at the stiffness. These feet have carried you across half the kingdom. They have stood in mud stirrups and snow. You treat them now with a moment of care, massaging the blood back into the toes. It is a moment of vulnerability. A knight is a tank of steel on the battlefield. But here, barefoot on a rush mat, you are just a man with aching joints. Your feet, when freed, are pale and slightly swollen. Your toes are cold. You flex them, trying to restore circulation. The stone floor, even through the rushes and herbs, feels shockingly cold against your bare soles. You quickly lift your feet off the floor and tuck them under the hem of your robe. Now comes the process of getting into bed. This is more involved than you might think. You can't just pull back the covers and slip in like we do with modern beds. Medieval beds were layered constructions. You had to navigate them carefully. First, you lift the bear fur. It's heavy, easily 15 or 20 pounds. You fold it back toward the foot of the bed. Then the wool blankets, one by one. They're not as heavy as the fur, but they're substantial. Good quality wool, tightly woven, dense with fibers. Under all the blankets, you find a linen sheet. This is the layer that actually touches your body. Linen was preferred over wool next to skin because it was smoother and didn't itch. It was also easier to wash. You slept between linen sheets and the wool blankets, and furs went on top for warmth. You climb up onto the bed. It's high enough that you have to step up almost like climbing a small ladder. You swing your legs up and settle back against the pillows. The pillows deserve mention. You have two. Both are stuffed with feathers, though not as densely as the mattress. Medieval pillows were flatter and firmer than modern ones. They provided support, but not the soft, cushiony comfort we expect today. Some people also used bolsters. long cylindrical pillows that ran the width of the bed and provided support for sitting up. Once you're settled, you begin the process of covering yourself. This is where medieval bedding really becomes impressive. You pull the linen sheet up first, tucking it around your body. Then the first wool blanket. You arrange it carefully, making sure it covers your feet completely. Cold feet can ruin a night's sleep. Then the second wool blanket. By now, you're starting to feel the beginnings of warmth. The layers are trapping the heat your body produces. The weight of the blankets is comforting, pressing down on you like a gentle hand. Finally, the bear fur. You pull it up, and it's like putting on a coat made of warmth. The fur is thick and insulating. Between the fur and the wool blankets, you're now covered by what must be 5 or 6 pounds of material. It's heavy, but that weight is reassuring. It keeps the cold out and the warmth in. But you're not done yet. The bed has one more crucial feature: the curtains. You reach out and grab the heavy fabric hanging from the bed's canopy frame. These curtains are made of thick wool dyed a deep red that's faded over years to a rusty brown. You pull them closed, starting with the side facing the window, then the side facing the door, then the foot of the bed. Finally, you pull the curtain closed behind your head. This moment of enclosure is psychologically profound. The world shrinks. The vast, cold, dangerous castle disappears, replaced by a soft, red-tinted womb. The silence deepens instantly. The air inside the curtains feels still waiting to be warmed by your breath. You are no longer a lord responsible for lands and lives. You are simply a consciousness safe inside a nest. It brings back memories of childhood, hiding in small spaces, the universal human desire to be held and hidden. Now you're completely enclosed. The bed has become a small room, a tent, a cave. The curtains block the drafts that are constantly moving through the chamber. They trap the warm air your body is generating, and they create a psychological sense of safety. In the darkness behind these curtains, you're hidden, protected. The vast, cold castle beyond seems further away. Inside your curtained bed space, the temperature begins to rise. It will never be truly warm by modern standards, but it will reach perhaps 60 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe even 65 near your body. That's enough. That's survivable. That's the difference between sleeping and lying awake, shivering all night. You adjust the bear fur slightly, making sure it covers your shoulder. The fur is sensory rich. You can feel the individual hairs against your cheek. They're coarse and slightly oily. Bear fur, like all animal fur, retains some of the natural oils from the animal's skin. These oils actually help waterproof the fur and add to its insulating properties. The smell is there, too faint but present. A wild smell, earth and animal and the forest from which this bear came decades ago. Lying there, you think about what this bed represents. It's not just furniture. It's a piece of survival technology evolved over generations of trial and error. Every element has a purpose. The height keeps you off the cold floor. The rope suspension provides support and prevents the mattress from compacting flat. The feathers create thousands of tiny air pockets that trap heat. The layered blankets create multiple insulating barriers. The curtains contain your body heat and block drafts. And the heavy fur on top seals the whole system like the lid on a pot. It is a masterpiece of passive heating. As you lie there, you marvel at the ingenuity of your people. They did not have engines or electricity, but they had observation. They watched how the bear slept in its den, how the bird fluffed its feathers, and they mimicked it. This is the essence of a winter survival skill, learning from the natural world to survive the natural world. Medieval people didn't understand thermodynamics or the physics of insulation the way we do. They couldn't explain why layering worked better than one thick blanket. They didn't know about convection currents or heat transfer coefficients, but they knew from experience what worked. They knew that survival in winter meant paying attention to every detail, and they passed this knowledge down through generations, refining and improving as they went. You shift slightly, settling deeper into the mattress. The feathers compress under your back, conforming to your body's shape. It's not perfect comfort. You can still feel the ropes of the bed frame through the mattress. Your hips and shoulders, the bony parts of your body, press harder against the mattress than your softer parts. By morning, you might have some aches from the uneven support, but it's infinitely better than the frozen ground you slept on last week. Outside the bed curtains, you can still hear the sounds of the castle, the wind, the crackle of the fire in the fireplace. Somewhere, distant voices. The castle is settling into its night rhythm, but it never truly sleeps. Somewhere, bakers are already beginning to prepare tomorrow's bread, taking advantage of the residual heat in their ovens from today's baking. Guards are changing shifts on the battlements. In the great hall below, servants are banking the fires and spreading pallets on the floor for their own sleep. But here, in your enclosed space, those sounds are muted. The curtains don't just block drafts, they dampen sound. You're in a cocoon, a private universe of warmth and darkness. And slowly, finally, your body begins to relax. But wait, you're not quite ready for sleep yet. There are still rituals to complete, prayers to say, precautions to take. Medieval life was structured by routines, and the nighttime routine was perhaps the most important of all. You sit up slightly careful not to disturb the careful arrangement of blankets. Through a gap in the curtains, you can see the brazier's glow. It's dimmer now. The coals are settling into their long, slow burn. You should check on it before sleeping. You push the curtains aside and swing your legs out of bed. The sudden rush of cold air is shocking after the warmth you'd built up. You grab a heavy robe that was draped over a chest near the bed. This is different from your sleeping robe. It's more like what we'd call a dressing gown, meant for moving around the chamber while still dressed for sleep. Bare feet on the stone floor again, even through the rushes, is intensely uncomfortable. You move quickly to the brazier. The coals are burning steadily, giving off heat but not flame. This is good. Flames meant the coals were burning too fast, consuming themselves. What you want is this slow, steady heat that will last through the night. But there's danger here too. Burning coals produce carbon monoxide, an invisible, odorless gas that can kill. Medieval people understood fire danger, but they didn't understand the specific chemistry. They knew that sealed rooms with burning coals sometimes led to people not waking up. They called it charcoal sleep, or blamed it on bad air. Their solution was to ensure some ventilation, even in winter. The gaps and drafts that made the castle cold also saved lives by preventing carbon monoxide buildup. You use an iron poker to adjust the coals slightly, ensuring they're not piled too high or burning too hot. Then you move to the fireplace. The fire here has burned down considerably. It's mostly glowing coals now, with a few small flames licking up from the remains of logs. This is the moment for what was called banking the fire. Using a long-handled shovel kept beside the fireplace, you carefully scoop ashes from the edges of the fire and pile them over the glowing coals. Not enough to smother the fire entirely, but enough to slow the burn dramatically. The ashes act as insulation, containing the heat of the coals while restricting the oxygen that feeds the flames. A properly banked fire could keep coals alive through the night. In the morning, a servant could remove the ash-add kindling and quickly bring the fire back to life without needing to restart it from scratch with flint and steel. This skill was essential. Fire starting was difficult and time-consuming in medieval times. You didn't just flick a lighter or strike a match. You had to strike steel against flint to create sparks, catch those sparks in char cloth, or tinder nurture a tiny ember into a small flame, and carefully build that flame with increasingly larger pieces of kindling until you had a sustainable fire. It could take 10 or 15 minutes even for an expert. So keeping fire alive overnight was far better than starting fresh each morning. With the fires tended, you move to the window. You check the shutter, ensuring it's secure. You can hear wind pressing against it from outside. The wood creaks slightly. You can feel the cold radiating through the wooden boards, but the shutter is holding firm. No gaps for deadly drafts. Then you go to the door. You lift the heavy wooden beam that serves as a lock and set it in place across the doorframe. This isn't just about privacy or security from thieves. In a castle, the door beam was protection against something more abstract, the dangers of the night. In the medieval mind, darkness was alive with threats. Not just human threats, but supernatural ones. Evil spirits, demons, restless dead. The blessing and closing of doors was a ritual of protection. With the door secured, you move back toward the bed. But first, you stop at a small chest near the wall. From it, you take a small prayer book. It's called a Book of Hours, a personal devotional text. Yours is modest, nothing like the illuminated masterpieces owned by kings. But it contains the prayers for Compline, the final prayer service of the day. You handle the book with reverence. The leather binding is soft, worn by years of touch. You think of the scribe who wrote these pages hunched over parchment in a cold scriptorium, his breath misting as he inked the Latin characters. That anonymous connection, again someone else's labor helping you through your night. You open to the marked page, the gold leaf on the capital letter catching the faint light of the embers. You kneel on the rush-covered floor beside the bed. The cold immediately seeps through your robe and the thin layer of rushes. Your knees press against hard stone underneath. But discomfort during prayer was considered appropriate. It kept you focused. It reminded you of your mortality. Protect us, Lord, as we stay awake. You begin reciting from memory. The Latin words flow smoothly. You've said this prayer thousands of times. Watch over us as we sleep, that awake we may keep watch with Christ, and asleep we may rest in peace. The prayers of Compline are about protection. They acknowledge the vulnerability of sleep. In medieval Christianity, sleep was seen as a small death, a nightly surrender of consciousness that left you open to both physical and spiritual danger. These prayers asked for divine protection through the dark hours. As you pray, your mind drifts to the people you've lost, the men who died in last week's skirmish. You see their faces. Young Robert, whose skull was crushed by a mace. Old William, who took an arrow through the throat and drowned in his own blood. You pray for their souls. You pray that they've found peace. You pray that their deaths meant something. Tears prick your eyes, surprising you. A knight is not supposed to weep, or so the songs say. But the songs are wrong. The songs are for the banquet hall. This silence is for the truth. You feel the weight of their lives on your conscience. Did you lead them well? Could you have saved them? You ask for forgiveness, for wisdom. This spiritual vulnerability is the counterbalance to your physical armor. In the day you are hard steel. At night before God, you are just a man hoping he is enough. You also pray for your wife Margaret, sleeping in a nearby chamber with her ladies. You pray for your children, though they're at another castle with Margaret's sister for the winter. You pray for Thomas, your loyal squire. You pray for the servants and soldiers of this castle, all of them huddled against the cold right now, trying to survive another winter night. Visit this place, O Lord. You continue, and drive far from it all the snares of the enemy. Let your holy angels dwell here to preserve us in peace, and may your blessing be upon us always. When the prayers are finished, you cross yourself and stand. Your knees ache from the cold floor. You're tired, bone tired. The kind of tired that comes from weeks of tension, of sleeping lightly, of always being ready for danger. Now finally, you can let that vigilance go. Inside these walls with guards on the battlements and your door barred, you can surrender to sleep. You climb back into bed, working your way through the layers of blankets and furs. You pull the curtains closed again. The darkness inside the bed space is absolute. You can't see your hand in front of your face. This is a darkness modern people rarely experience. We have street lights, night lights, the glow of electronics. But in medieval times, when the light sources were extinguished, true darkness descended. That darkness could be terrifying. Many people feared it. Children cried in it. Some adults never fully adjusted to it. But you've learned to find comfort in this darkness. It means rest. It means the day's demands are over. It means you can let go. You arrange the pillows under your head, trying to find a comfortable position. The nightcap is slightly too tight, and you adjust it. The bear fur has slipped off one shoulder, and you pull it back up. The wool blankets press down with their comforting weight. Your body heat is filling the enclosed space now. The air you're breathing is warmer than the chamber outside the curtains. You can feel warmth creeping into your fingers and toes. It's not the instant warmth of modern heating, but a slow earned warmth. The warmth of layering done right. The warmth of shelter claimed from the jaws of winter. Outside, the wind continues its endless song through the castle's stones. Inside, you close your eyes. Sleep is coming. You can feel it approaching like a tide. Your thoughts begin to scatter and drift. The boundary between waking and sleeping blurs. This is your kingdom now, not the stone castle outside these curtains, not the lands you hold, not the title you bear. Just this, a small space of warmth in an ocean of cold. A few layers of cloth and fur standing between you and the winter night. And it's enough. But sleep doesn't come immediately. It never does on your first night back from campaign. Your body is tired, yes, desperately tired, but your mind is still racing. The transition from the hypervigilance of military life to the relative safety of home takes time. You lie in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the night. Every castle had its own symphony of sounds as distinctive as a voice. You knew this castle's voice well. The particular creak of the wooden beams in the great hall below as they contracted in the cold. The way wind howling through the east tower made a sound like a woman singing. The rhythmic scrape of the guards' footsteps on the battlements above their patterns so regular you could almost count time by them. But tonight, there are sounds you don't recognize. Or rather, sounds you recognize, but which your military-trained mind can't help but interpret as potential threats. That thump from somewhere below, probably just a door closing. But could it be? That scratching sound in the walls, certainly just mice in the space between stones. But what if? That distant shout, likely just a guard calling to another on the walls. But might it be a warning? You force yourself to breathe slowly, deliberately. You're safe. You're home. The castle has withstood sieges and storms. Its walls are 5 feet thick in places. The gates are oak reinforced with iron. The guards are professionals, men you've trained yourself. There's no threat. And yet the darkness presses close. In the absolute blackness inside the bed, curtains, your other senses heighten. You become acutely aware of the sound of your own breathing, the feel of the linen sheet against your skin, the weight of the blankets, the faint smell of the bear fur and the herbs in the rushes. Medieval people had a complicated relationship with darkness. Without artificial light, nighttime was a completely different world. Activities that were easy in daylight became difficult or impossible. Reading was out of the question unless you were wealthy enough to burn candles or oil lamps profusely. Traveling at night was dangerous. Even walking through your own home in darkness could result in falling down stairs or walking into walls. But beyond these practical concerns, darkness held spiritual significance. In Christian theology, light represented God, truth, and goodness. Darkness represented evil, sin, and deception. Night was when demons were believed to be most active. It was when the boundary between the living world and the spiritual world became thin. People took precautions. They said protective prayers like the compline you just recited. They made the sign of the cross before sleeping. Wealthy individuals might keep a piece of blessed palm from Palm Sunday near their beds, or a relic of a saint. Some people drew crosses on door frames or windows with blessed chalk. These weren't just superstitions, though we might view them that way now. They were deeply meaningful rituals that provided psychological comfort in a frightening world. Consider the human need for control in a chaotic world. When plagues strike without warning, when crops fail due to early frost, when war arrives at the gate, one feels small. These rituals, the chalk on the door, the Latin verse, are ways of asserting order. They are psychological armor. By drawing that cross, you are telling the universe, this space is mine. I am protected. It is a powerful placebo, perhaps, but a necessary one to quiet the anxious mind. You remember suddenly something from your childhood. You must have been 7 or 8 years old. You were a page in another nobleman's household, learning the skills that would eventually make you a knight. One winter night, you woke in the dormitory where the pages slept. It was pitch dark. You needed to urinate, but the chamber pot was on the other side of the room. You were terrified to get out of bed, convinced that something was lurking in the darkness. You lay there for what felt like hours, desperate and afraid, until finally your body's need overcame your fear. You got up. You walked across the dark room, hands outstretched, heart pounding. You found the chamber pot. You relieved yourself, and nothing happened. No demons grabbed you. No ghosts appeared. Just darkness and cold and the sound of other boys sleeping. That night taught you something important. Fear of the dark was natural, but it could be overcome. Darkness was just the absence of light. It couldn't hurt you by itself. The real dangers, human or animal, were just as present in daylight. Darkness simply made them harder to see. But knowing this intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. Even now, as a grown man, a warrior who's faced death in battle, you still feel a primal unease in complete darkness. It's hardwired into human biology. We're diurnal creatures. We evolved to sleep when it's dark. When we're awake in darkness, our nervous system goes on alert. You shift position, rolling onto your side. The feather mattress rustles. The rope bed frame creaks. You pull the bear fur higher, covering your shoulder completely. The warmth is building nicely now. Your extremities are finally losing their chill. You think about Margaret, probably asleep by now in her chamber. Does she sleep better when you're home? Or worse, worried about you even in the safety of the castle? You met her 10 years ago, an arranged marriage like most noble marriages. You hardly knew each other on your wedding day. But over the years, something real had grown between you. Not the passionate romance of the songs, but something perhaps more valuable: partnership, respect, affection. She was brave in ways that didn't involve swords. Managing a castle household through winter required constant decision-making. How much grain to use for bread versus saving for seed? How much firewood to burn versus preserving for emergencies? Which servants to trust with which tasks? How to settle disputes without letting them fester into violence? How to keep morale up when winter stretched on and supplies dwindled? And then there were the medical emergencies. Winter brought illness. The cold, the close quarters, the inability to keep things truly clean, all of it created perfect conditions for disease to spread. Margaret had learned healing arts from her mother. She knew which herbs helped with fever, which poultices drew out infection. She sat up through long nights tending to sick servants and soldiers. She made the hard decisions about quarantine when necessary. Somewhere in her solar, Margaret is probably awake too, listening to one of her ladies cough, ready to rise and brew a herbal tea if needed. In medieval life, women like her were the quiet guardians of health and comfort, keeping the household breathing through the long winter nights. Her knowledge was a vital winter survival skill, ensuring the resilience of the household in medieval times. It is a nuance of history that a medieval documentary might overlook, yet it remains the backbone of survival. You owe her your respect and more. When you return from campaigns, she returns the household to you, smoothly reports on what's happened in your absence, seeks your judgment on difficult matters. But you both know the truth: she could run this place without you. You're the warrior, the military strategist, but she's the one who keeps everyone alive through winter. A new sound breaks through your thoughts. Bells. The church bells from the chapel in the castle courtyard. You count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, midnight. The dead center of night. This was a significant time in medieval spirituality. Midnight was when monks rose for matins, the night office of prayer. It was considered a powerful time when the barrier between physical and spiritual was thinnest. It was the time when witches supposedly gathered, when ghosts walked, when the wild hunt rode across the sky. But it also marked a turning point. After midnight, you were moving toward morning, not away from it. The longest part of the night was over. Now you were on the journey back to light. You realize you've been awake for over an hour, maybe longer. This is normal. Medieval people often slept in two segments, a pattern researchers call biphasic or segmented sleep. You would sleep for several hours after going to bed, then wake naturally around midnight or 1 in the morning. You'd be awake for an hour or two, then sleep again until dawn. During this wakeful period, people did various things. Some prayed. Some had quiet conversations with their bed partners. Some checked on children or tended to fires. Some simply lay in the darkness, thinking or worrying or planning. There were practical reasons for this sleep pattern. In an era before refrigeration, when food preservation was challenging, people often ate their main meal in early afternoon. By bedtime, they were hungry again. Waking in the middle of the night, they might feel genuine hunger. Some people kept bread and cheese near their beds for a small midnight snack. Also, sleeping straight through for 8 or 9 hours in winter meant being unconscious during the coldest part of the night, usually the hours just before dawn. If fires died completely, temperatures could drop dangerously low. Waking periodically allowed you to check that fires were still giving off some heat, that bedding was properly arranged, that everyone was still warm enough. You decide you're thirsty. There's a pitcher of watered wine on a table near your bed. You push the curtains open, and the chamber air rushes in cold and sharp. You can barely see. The fire in the fireplace has burned down to almost nothing, just the faintest glow from buried coals. The brazier gives off slightly more light, a dim red gleam. You reach for the pitcher, fumbling in the darkness. Your hand finds it. The pottery is cold to the touch. You pour some liquid into a cup, also clay, also cold. You bring it to your lips. The wine is watered, maybe 1 part wine to 3 parts water. It's cold enough that you can feel it going down your throat and into your stomach. Not refreshing exactly, but necessary. The cold air you've been breathing all day has dried your mouth and throat. You set the cup down and retreat quickly back into the bed, pulling the curtains shut again. The brief exposure to the chamber's cold air has lowered the temperature inside your bed cocoon. You curl up slightly, pulling your knees toward your chest, wrapping yourself in a ball to conserve heat. It will take several minutes to warm up again. This is the reality of winter survival in a medieval castle. Comfort was relative and temporary. You built up warmth carefully, layer by layer, and then guarded it jealously. Every time you exposed yourself to the cold for any reason, you paid a price. So you minimized those exposures. You planned ahead. You kept necessities close. You developed routines that kept you warm and alive. As you lie there, waiting for sleep to return, your mind drifts to the other people in this castle. You think about the hierarchy of sleep, how your relatively comfortable rest tonight is a privilege not shared by many. Down in the great hall, dozens of people are sleeping right now. Servants, men-at-arms, craftsmen, and others who serve the castle have made their beds on the floor, not in separate rooms, not in private spaces. Right there in the great hall, the same room where meals are served, where business is conducted, where entertainment happens in the evening. As the evening meal ended and the trestle tables were cleared away, servants laid down pallets, simple mattresses made of cloth stuffed with straw. These were stored during the day and brought out at night. People claim their spots based on an informal but well-understood hierarchy. Those who'd served the castle longest got spots closer to the fireplace. Newcomers slept near the drafty doors. There is a poignant intimacy in this scene. Imagine the tangle of limbs, the chorus of breathing. It is a pile of humanity. Old John the Smith, his hands permanently stained with soot, sleeping back to back with the young stable boy sharing the warmth of their spines. The laundry women huddled together under a mound of spare blankets, whispering stories until sleep overtakes them. This lack of privacy might seem horrifying to us, but for them, it was a defense against the crushing loneliness of the dark. To sleep alone in the cold was to be outcast. To sleep together was to belong. They slept in their clothes usually, perhaps removing outer layers like tunics or overcoats, but keeping on their undergarments and hose. They shared blankets, often 2 or 3 people under one large woolen blanket. This was partly about resource scarcity. There weren't enough blankets for everyone to have their own, but it was also practical. Shared body heat kept everyone warmer. Privacy as a concept barely existed for these people. They worked in groups, ate in groups, and slept in groups. The sounds of dozens of people sleeping together created a symphony. Snoring, coughing, the rustle of straw, occasional words spoken in dreams, the sounds of bodily functions. But they were used to it. Silence would have been more disturbing than this familiar cacophony. The dogs slept there too. Large hunting dogs, hounds bred for tracking and bringing down game. They weren't pets in the modern sense. They were working animals, valuable property. But they were also companions. They slept among the humans, adding their warmth, their smell, and their sounds to the mix. If danger threatened, the dogs would alert before any human noticed. You feel a deep affection for your hounds. You know their names, their quirks. There is Grip, the old wolfhound with the scarred ear, who always sleeps near the fire, and Swift, the young bitch, who insists on sleeping near the door. The servants let them stay, not just for warmth, but for the comfort of their presence. A dog's steady heartbeat is a lullaby that transcends class and rank. In the great hall, the line between master-servant and beast blurs into a single breathing entity fighting the cold. The great hall never got truly warm, even with fires burning at both ends. But the concentration of bodies, human and animal, created a warmer microclimate than individual rooms could achieve. It was a form of cooperative survival. Everyone benefited from everyone else's body heat. You think about young Thomas, your squire. He's not sleeping in the great hall. As your personal servant, he has a small space in the corridor just outside your chamber. It's barely more than a closet, but it's his own. He sleeps on a straw pallet, much like the ones in the great hall, but he has a door he can close. That privacy, that tiny personal space, is a mark of status. He's not just any servant. He's a squire in training to become a knight. Someday, he might have chambers of his own like yours. But right now, he's probably curled up under a thin blanket, shivering, slightly proud of his position, but cold nonetheless. Tomorrow, he'll wake before you do. He'll relight your fire, bring water for washing, help you dress. His comfort, or lack of it, ensures yours. Then there are the guards on the walls. You think about them often. You've done guard duty yourself many years ago when you were younger. You remember how brutal it was. Walking back and forth on the stone battlement's wind, cutting through even the thickest cloak. Your feet going numb in your boots. Your face so cold it ached. Your hands so stiff you worried you couldn't grip your weapon if you needed to. Guards rotated in shifts. No one could endure a full night on the walls. They do 2 hours, maybe 3, then be relieved. They'd go to the guardhouse, a small stone room with a fire, and thaw out before their next shift. Some fell asleep during their break, even sitting upright, too exhausted to care about discomfort. The guards tonight are watching more than just for enemies. They're watching the moat ice, as Thomas mentioned. They're watching for fire breaking out in any of the castle buildings. They're watching the surrounding forest, where wolves still prowled in winter, driven by hunger to come closer to human habitation than they would in summer. And they're enduring it all because this is their job, because they're paid, though not much, because they have loyalty to you, their lord, because this is the world they know and they have no other options. Medieval society was not mobile like ours. You were born into a position and you likely died in that position. A guard's son became a guard. A servant's daughter became a servant. But within those constraints there was still human dignity. There were still friendships, romances, jokes, moments of joy. There was still pride in doing one's job well. The guards on the walls tonight aren't just enduring. They're doing something they consider important. They're protecting the household. They're part of something larger than themselves. You think about the woman Margaret, your wife, who right now is sleeping in the solar, the private upper chamber reserved for the lady of the castle and her closest attendants. Her bed is similar to yours, perhaps slightly less grand. She's probably under several layers of blankets too, possibly sharing her bed with one or two of her ladies for warmth and companionship. Medieval women of noble birth had a peculiar position. They had authority and respect within the domestic sphere. Margaret commanded all the female servants, oversaw food preparation, managed clothing and textile production, educated young girls sent to the castle as part of their noble upbringing. In your absence, she had even more authority, acting as your representative. But she had no official power in the male-dominated structures of military and political life. She couldn't fight. She couldn't vote in councils. Her value was measured partly by the alliances her family brought and the children she bore. It was a constrained existence by modern standards. Yet within those constraints, women like Margaret found ways to exercise real influence. Through careful management, through wise counsel privately given through networks of relationships with other noble women, they shaped events. History often remembers the warriors and kings, but behind every successful medieval lord was often a competent lady managing the complex logistics that made military campaigns possible. You feel a wave of gratitude for Margaret. Tomorrow you should tell her. Thank her. Not for doing her duty, which was how such things were often framed, but for being good at it. For being someone you trusted. For being partner, not just wife. The hierarchy of sleep extends beyond the castle walls too. Out in the village, in the small houses clustered near the castle for protection, peasant families are sleeping even more roughly than your servants. Whole families in single-room cottages. Everyone's sleeping on straw mattresses laid directly on packed earth floors. Animals, cows and chickens and pigs, sometimes brought inside during the coldest weather. Their body heat helping warm the cottage, but their smell and waste creating unpleasant conditions. Those families have no glass in their windows, just shutters that block light when closed and let in freezing air when open. They have no fireplaces, just a central hearth with a hole in the thatched roof for smoke. Their children sleep in the clothes they wore all day, huddled under whatever scraps of fabric served as blankets. Yet they survived. generations of them living through winter after winter. They developed their own strategies. They knew which wild plants could be eaten when food ran low. They knew how to repair a thatched roof in the middle of winter. They knew how to keep a fire going with damp wood. They knew songs and stories that made the long nights pass faster. This was the social pyramid in which you lived. At the top, you and Margaret with your feather beds and fur blankets. Below you, the skilled workers and soldiers with their pallets and wool blankets. Below them, the peasants with their straw and their shared animal warmth. And at the very bottom, the truly destitute, the beggars and outcasts who might not survive winter at all, who might be found frozen in ditches come spring. This thought troubles you. The concept of noblesse oblige, that nobility obligates, weighs on you. You remember instructing the almoner to distribute extra bread and wood to the poorest cottages this week. It is never enough, you know that. But it is something. You cannot stop the winter, but you can in small ways blunt its teeth for those under your protection. In the silence of your warm bed, you vow to check the village granaries yourself tomorrow. A lord who does not care for his people is no lord at all, but a parasite on the land. It wasn't fair, not by modern standards. But fairness wasn't a medieval concept in the way we understand it. There was a sense of mutual obligation. You owed your people protection and justice. They owed you service and loyalty. When the system worked, everyone had a place, a role, a reason to keep going. When it didn't work, when lords were cruel or incompetent, when harvests failed, when war destroyed everything, then the whole structure could collapse into starvation and chaos. These thoughts are heavy, too heavy for sleep. You try to clear your mind to focus instead on the immediate sensations of warmth and rest. But it's hard. The weight of responsibility presses on you almost as heavily as the weight of the blankets. Your mind drifts further back now to the years before you became a knight. Before you had this chamber, this bed, this responsibility. You were a boy once, though it feels like a lifetime ago. You were born in spring, the second son of a minor lord. Your older brother would inherit your father's lands and title. For you, there was only one real path, the church or knighthood. The church never appealed to you. Too much sitting still, too much reading. So knighthood it was. At age 7, you were sent away from home to serve as a page in another lord's household. This was normal. Noble children were routinely sent to other castles to learn manners skills and to build the network of relationships that would sustain them through life. But knowing it was normal didn't make it less frightening for a 7-year-old boy. You remember the day you arrived at that castle. It was autumn, the air already cold. The castle seemed enormous, much larger than your father's modest fortification. Everything was strange. The faces, the routines, the expectations. You wanted to cry, but knew you couldn't. Pages who cried were mocked mercilessly. That first winter was brutal. You slept in a dormitory with a dozen other boys ranging in age from 7 to 14. The room was on the 3rd floor of a tower, small and cramped. There was one narrow window, no glass, just a shutter that was always closed in winter. The only heat came from a small brazier in the center of the room, tended by the oldest boys. The memory is visceral. You can almost smell the damp wool and the unwashed bodies of the other boys. You recall the way the cold air seemed to have teeth gnawing at your fingers and nose. You remember lying awake, listening to the wind howl like a dying beast, and feeling a loneliness so profound It felt like a physical hole in your chest. You missed your mother's voice. You missed your father's laugh. But you learned to swallow that pain, to pack it down deep where the cold couldn't reach it. That winter forged your character. It taught you that misery is temporary, but endurance is permanent. The hierarchy among the boys was strict. Older boys had first claim on the warmth near the brazier. Younger boys slept near the walls where it was coldest. You remember lying on your pallet of straw shivering, listening to the older boys talk and laugh near the warmth. You were so cold that first winter you thought you might actually die from it. Your hands and feet were covered in chilblains, painful swellings caused by repeated exposure to cold. But you learned. You learned to sleep with your hands tucked into your armpits to keep them warm. You learned to curl up tightly to conserve heat. You learned to befriend the older boys so they might let you sit near the brazier sometimes. You learned that if you did your chores quickly and well, you might be rewarded with an extra blanket or permission to sleep closer to the heat source. You learned other things too. How to serve a table without spilling. How to care for armor and weapons. How to ride a horse properly. How to speak respectfully to nobles. How to fight with wooden swords. How to read, though just barely. How to sing the hymns required at church services. How to survive in a world that wasn't designed for your comfort. At 14, you became a squire. This was a promotion. You were assigned to a specific knight, a gruff man named Sir Aldrich, who'd fought in 2 wars and countless smaller conflicts. Your job was to care for his armor, his weapons, his horse, to accompany him everywhere, to learn by watching him. Sir Aldrich was not kind, but he was fair. He expected perfection and would cuff you hard if you failed. But he also really taught you. He showed you how to read terrain for defensive advantage, how to manage your horse during a charge, how to strike with a sword so the blow transferred maximum force, how to endure pain without showing it. He also taught you about cold. You remember one particular winter when you were perhaps 15. You'd been traveling with Sir Aldrich, just the 2 of you, and a servant moving between castles. A storm caught you in the open. Not a summer thunderstorm, but a true winter blizzard. The wind was so strong it knocked you off your horse. The snow was so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Sir Aldrich found a rocky overhang barely enough to be called shelter. He dismounted and immediately began issuing orders. Unsaddle the horses. Use the saddles and blankets to create a windbreak. Gather any dry wood you can find under the overhang. Get a fire started. Move. You moved. You did what he said, though your hands were so numb you could barely work. The servant got a fire going somehow, though to this day you don't know how he managed it with wet wood and wind. Sir Aldrich forced you all to huddle together, pressed against the horses for their warmth. He gave each of you a piece of salted meat to chew, slowly said it would help your body make heat. It was there, huddled against the heaving flank of a warhorse, smelling the wet leather and the smoke, that you understood the true nature of knighthood. It wasn't about glory or banners. It was about keeping life burning in the face of death. Sir Aldrich shared his own cloak with you that night, a gesture he never spoke of again. That silent act of care was a greater lesson than any sword drill. It taught you that strength exists to protect the weak. You survived that night. Barely. At dawn, the storm had passed. You dug yourselves out of a drift that had partially buried you, and Sir Aldrich said something you never forgot. There's no glory in freezing to death. Winter doesn't care about your courage or your honor. It will kill you just as dead as any sword. But winter has rules. Learn them. Respect them. Use them. Do that and you can survive anything. That lesson shaped you. When you finally became a knight at age 21, when you won your spurs in a tournament and swore your oaths, you carried Sir Aldrich's teaching with you. You never underestimated cold. You never took chances with winter. And you always made sure your men had what they needed to survive the night. Now here you are, 2 decades later, a landed knight with your own castle and your own squire to train. Thomas is about the same age you were when Sir Aldrich took you on. You try to be firmer than kind with Thomas because that's what worked for you. But sometimes you wonder if there's a better way, if you could teach the necessary lessons without quite so much harshness. But then again, the world is harsh. Better Thomas learns that from you in relative safety than learns it the hard way in battle or in a blizzard. You're preparing him to survive. That's your duty. You think about the cold winters of your youth, not with nostalgia, but with a kind of amazed respect. You survived them. You came out stronger. The boy who shivered on that pallet in the dormitory became the man who now sleeps under bear fur. The journey from there to here was long and painful, but you made it. And strangely, you're grateful for those hard years. They taught you that comfort is earned, not given. They taught you to appreciate warmth when you have it. They taught you that humans can adapt to almost anything if they must. They taught you that survival is a skill, not an accident. You shift position in your bed, feeling the warmth you've built up through careful layering. This isn't just a warm bed, it's a victory. A triumph over the cold that once seemed insurmountable. Every layer of cloth and fur represents knowledge gained through generations of human effort. Every technique, from banking fires to closing bed curtains, represents someone's insight, someone's innovation, someone's determination to live through another winter. You're part of that story, part of that long human struggle against the cold. And tomorrow, when Thomas helps you into your armor, you'll pass some of that knowledge to him. Not all of it. He's not ready for all of it. But piece by piece, winter by winter, he'll learn, just as you did. The thought is comforting. You're not just surviving. You're part of a chain of survival that stretches back to the first humans who learned to control fire and forward to generations yet unborn. Your ancestors survived winters far worse than this, with less technology, less knowledge. And your descendants will continue the struggle, hopefully with better tools. For now, though, this moment is enough. This warmth is enough. This rest is enough. A sound draws your attention. Footsteps in the corridor outside your chamber. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Your instantly alert years of military training kicking in. Your hand moves to the sword you keep beside your bed, even in sleep. But then you hear a low voice. "All's well, my lord. Just the rounds." It's the night watchman making his circuit through the castle. He's checking on fires, making sure no candles have been left burning where they might cause danger, ensuring all doors are barred. His presence is reassuring. The castle is functioning as it should. "Thank you," you call back softly, not wanting to wake others who might be sleeping in nearby chambers. The footsteps continue down the corridor, fading into the distance. You release the sword hilt and settle back into your pillows. This is another form of warmth, you realize. Not physical warmth, but social warmth. The warmth of knowing you're not alone. That there are people awake while you sleep, watching over the household. That there's a system in place, routines followed, responsibilities taken seriously. Medieval life was intensely communal in ways that are hard for modern people to grasp. Yes, you have this private chamber. Yes, the nobility enjoyed privileges. But no one, not even a king, was truly isolated. Everyone depended on everyone else for survival. The guards on the walls depended on the cooks to prepare hot meals. The cooks depended on the guards to keep them safe. Both depended on the smith to maintain their tools and weapons. The smith depended on the charcoal burners in the forest. The charcoal burners depended on the castle for protection from bandits. And so on in an intricate web of interdependence. This wasn't always harmonious. There were conflicts, resentments, abuses of power. But underlying it all was a shared understanding. We're all in this together. If the castle falls, everyone suffers. If we get through winter, everyone benefits. You think about the sleeping arrangements throughout the castle, and you realize they form a kind of map of social relationships and mutual support. In the great hall below, people are sleeping in clusters based on affiliation and friendship. The kitchen staff sleep near each other. The stable hands sleep together. The men-at-arms form their own group. These clusters provide not just shared warmth, but shared security. If something happens in the night, if someone gets sick or has a nightmare or needs help, there are friends nearby. In the tower where the guards rest between shifts, men are sleeping while their comrades remain on watch. There's trust there. Trust that the watchman will stay alert, will sound alarm if needed, will protect the sleeping ones. Even the animals are part of this social warmth. The dogs in the great hall aren't just tolerating the humans. They're pack animals. The humans are their pack. Sleeping together is what packs do. The horses in the stable are herd animals, drawing comfort from each other's presence. The chickens huddle together in their coop. Even the cattle brought into the lower level of the castle for winter, clustering together for warmth. Down in the great hall, your favorite hound, old Bran Grey around the muzzle now, has curled up at the feet of the kitchen boys. His steady breathing adds to the chorus of sleep, a reminder that in medieval life, even animals were family sharing their warmth without question. Utilizing this animal warmth was an instinctive winter survival skill. It paints a picture of medieval times far more intimate than what you might see in a medieval documentary. This is a survival strategy older than humanity itself. Warmth through togetherness, safety in numbers, the sharing of resources and heat and vigilance, and it extends to your own bed. Though you're alone right now, that's not always the case. In the depths of winter, on the coldest nights, you and Margaret might share a bed, along with a trusted servant, sleeping at the foot of the bed for additional warmth and to be available if needed during the night. There was no shame in this. Sharing sleep for warmth was practical. Medieval people understood that body heat was a precious resource. 2 people under the same blankets were warmer than 2 people under separate blankets. 3 were warmer still. Children commonly slept 3 or 4 to a bed. Servants shared beds as a matter of course. Even traveling nobles stopping at an inn would expect to share a bed with strangers if the inn was crowded. The idea of sleeping alone every night was a luxury most people never experienced. You actually find yourself wishing Margaret were here right now. Not for romance, though that has its place, but just for companionship, for the sound of another person breathing nearby. for the slight additional warmth another body would provide, for the comfort of not being alone in the dark. You cherish those quiet moments with her, the way her breathing syncs with yours, the way she instinctively reaches for your hand in her sleep. It grounds you. It reminds you that you are not just a warrior, but a husband, a man capable of tenderness. That dual nature is difficult to maintain, to be hard enough to kill, yet soft enough to love. But it is what makes life worth living. But she has her own duties, her own space, her own routines. You'll see her tomorrow. Perhaps you'll sit together in the solar in the evening, both of you near the fire, talking over the day's events. That quiet domestic companionship is one of the rewards of your position. Not the glory or the power, but the simple human connection. Outside, you can hear the bells ring again. You count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 bells. Perhaps 2 hours since midnight. The night is passing. The darkest hours, the coldest hours are here. All across the castle, people and animals are deep in their first sleep, or like you awake in that strange in-between time. Somewhere, a baby cries. The sound is faint, muffled by stone walls, and distance, but unmistakable. You hear a woman's voice, soft and soothing. The crying stops. A mother caring for her child as mothers have done for thousands of years. Another kind of warmth, the warmth of care, of nurturance, of love. You think about your own children safe at another castle with their aunt. You miss them. Your son, who's 7 now, the age you were when you left home. Is he sleeping well tonight? Is he warm enough? Your daughter, just 5, who loves stories and songs. Is she scared of the dark? Or is she too young yet to understand? You want to protect them from everything. From cold, from hunger, from war, from pain. But you know you can't. They'll face their own challenges. They'll endure their own cold winters. All you can do is teach them what you know, give them the tools and knowledge to survive, and hope it's enough. That's what every parent does, what every parent has always done, passing on survival strategies to the next generation. Whether it's teaching a child how to layer clothing for warmth, or how to bank a fire, or how to treat a wound, or how to negotiate a social hierarchy. All of it is survival knowledge. And it works. Humanity persists. We adapt. We learn. We pass it on. The fact that you're here warm and alive in this bed is proof that your ancestors succeeded. They survived long enough to have children who survived long enough to have children on and on back through countless generations. You're the current link in that chain. Tomorrow, you'll wake and continue doing what humans do, surviving, adapting, teaching, caring. The thought is grounding. You're not just an individual fighting personal battles. You're part of something larger, a family line stretching back into the mists of time and forward into an unknown future. A social structure that, for all its flaws, has kept your people alive through countless winters. A species that refuses to surrender to the cold. You adjust the bear fur one more time, pulling it up under your chin. The warmth inside your bed cocoon is substantial now. Your body has finally fully relaxed. The cold that soaked into your bones during weeks of campaigning is finally dissipating. You can feel it leaving, replaced by a deep, pleasant warmth that spreads from your core to your extremities. Sleep is close now, very close. Your thoughts are becoming less linear, more dreamlike. Images float through your mind without much connection. The faces of your men, the frozen moat silver in moonlight, Margaret's smile, Thomas fumbling with armor straps, Sir Aldrich's gruff voice teaching you about cold, your children laughing, the great hall full of people and warmth and life. All of it swirls together into a feeling of contentment might be too strong a word, but satisfaction perhaps. You've done what you set out to do today. You've come home. You've prepared for sleep properly. You've said your prayers. You've made your space as warm and safe as possible. Now you can rest. The darkness behind your closed eyelids deepens. Your breathing slows. The sounds of the castle fade, not because they've stopped, but because you're slipping away from conscious awareness of them. The boundary between waking and sleeping dissolves. You're drifting now, floating. The cold world outside your bed curtains seems very far away. You're in a warm cave, a safe den, a nest. The bear whose fur covers you is a guardian spirit. The sheep whose wool insulates you are a ghostly flock protecting you from harm. The geese who gave their feathers for your mattress lift you on gentle wings. Ridiculous thoughts, dream thoughts, but comforting nonetheless. Sleep is taking you gently, like a mother lifting a tired child. You don't resist. You've earned this rest. You surrender to it gratefully. In that strange space between waking and sleeping, your mind produces images. Not quite dreams yet, but not conscious thoughts either. Fragments, impressions, memories mixed with imagination. You're walking through a desert. The sun beats down merciless. This is the Holy Land, the destination of countless crusaders, though you yourself have never been. But you've heard the stories. You've met men who made the journey. And now your sleeping mind is constructing its own version of those far-off places. The heat is intense, the exact opposite of the cold you've been thinking about all night. Your armor, which felt so heavy and cold in the northern winter, is now a furnace. The metal plates, heated by the sun, burn through the padded gambeson beneath. You can barely breathe. The air itself seems to sear your lungs. Sand stretches in all directions, endless, featureless, hostile. There's no water. Your throat is parched. Your lips are cracked. You would kill for shade, for coolness, for a single drop of water. And then, strangely, you find yourself longing for the cold, for the bite of winter wind, for snow melting on your tongue, for the feeling of your breath visible in the air. The cold that seemed like an enemy now seems like a friend. You understand in this dream logic that extremes are equally dangerous. Heat and cold are two faces of the same threat. Both can kill you. Both demand respect. The desert dissolves. Now you're in a different place. A memory, not a fantasy. You're in a forest. It's winter, deep winter. You're on campaign. Your column of soldiers is trudging through snow that's knee-deep. Every step is exhausting. The cold is so intense that your armor feels like it's conducting cold directly into your body, as if you're wearing sheets of ice. One of your men falls. He just stops walking and sits down in the snow. You go to him. "Get up," you order. "We have to keep moving." But he looks at you with dull eyes and says, "I'm tired, my lord, so tired. I'll just rest here a moment." You know that look. You've seen it before. It's hypothermia. If he stays down, he'll fall asleep in the snow and never wake. You grab him, haul him to his feet, make him walk. You detail 2 other men to keep him moving, to not let him sit down again. By the time you reach shelter that evening, he's alive. Barely, but alive. The memory shifts. Now you're sitting by a fire. Not in the forest, but here in your castle. It's years ago. You were younger. Sir Aldrich was still alive, visiting you in your first command. You're both sitting close to a fireplace, cups of mulled wine in hand. The thing about cold, Sir Aldrich is saying, is that it's honest. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't lie. It just is. You can fight it or you can work with it, but you can't ignore it. I learned that from you, you say. No, Sir Aldrich corrects. You learned it from winter itself. I just made sure you survived long enough to learn. The image fades. Your sleeping mind is creating these vignettes, processing the day's experiences and your lifetime of memories. This is what sleep does. It takes the raw material of experience and sorts, it files, it makes sense of it. Now, you're in a different kind of cold. You're underwater. In summer, you and some other boys jumped from a bridge into a river. The water was cold, shockingly cold, even in summer. You went under, deep under, and for a moment you didn't know which way was up. The cold water surrounded you, pressed on you. You couldn't breathe. Panic started to rise. But then you remembered bubbles rise. You watched the bubbles from your mouth and followed them upward. Your head broke the surface. You gasped for air. The other boys were laughing. It had only been a few seconds, though it felt like forever. That memory teaches you something, though your sleeping mind doesn't articulate it clearly. When you're surrounded by cold, by darkness, by threat, you have to find your way to the surface. You have to keep moving toward air, toward light, toward warmth. Giving up means death. Fighting means life. More images now coming faster. Your wedding day, nervous and uncertain. Margaret's face, young and solemn, as she takes your hand. The first time you wore full armor in battle, the terrifying exhilaration of the charge. The birth of your son, hearing his first cry from outside the chamber where Margaret labored. The death of your father, watching him grow smaller and weaker until he was just a husk. The taste of honey mead on a festival day. The smell of horses and leather. The sound of rain on stone. The feeling of grass under your bare feet in childhood. A sensation you rarely experience now. All of it flows together, a river of experience and sensation. Your life compressed and distilled into a series of moments, feelings, lessons. You're watching it all from a distance now, as if it's happening to someone else. But it's also deeply personal, deeply you. The images slow, fade. Now there's just darkness, warm darkness. The darkness inside your bed, the darkness behind your eyelids, the darkness of sleep descending fully. Your last conscious thoughts are simple. Gratitude for warmth, appreciation for shelter, relief that you're here now safe, and a quiet determination to wake tomorrow and face whatever comes with the same stubborn resilience that carried you through today. The castle sleeps around you, not perfectly, not peacefully, but together. A stone shelter full of fragile human life huddled against the winter night. Guards walk the walls. Fires burn low. People stir in dreams. Babies nurse. Lovers embrace. The old suffer with arthritic pain. Children sleep the deep sleep of the young. And you, a knight who has seen battle and cold and death, sleep in your bed of fur and feathers, dreaming of deserts and forests of teachers and children, of the endless human struggle against the elements, dreaming of warmth found in the heart of cold, dreaming of comfort earned through hardship, dreaming of survival, that most basic and most noble of human achievements. The night deepens. Hours pass. Outside, the stars wheel across the winter sky. The moon sets. The temperature drops further, reaching its nadir in the hours before dawn. Ice thickens on the moat. Frost grows on the stones of the outer walls, creating intricate crystal patterns that will melt when the sun rises. But inside the castle, inside your chamber, inside your bed, there is warmth. Hard-won warmth, fragile warmth, but real warmth nonetheless. And you sleep. Morning will come. The sun will rise late, climbing slowly into a winter sky. Someone, probably Thomas, will knock on your door. You'll wake slowly, reluctantly, leaving the warmth you've built through the night. The chamber will be cold again. The fire will have died to ash. Your breath will be visible in the air. But you'll get up. You'll face the cold day. You'll do your duty. Because that's what people do. That's what they've always done. They survive the night, and they greet the dawn, and they continue. But for now, for these last hours of darkness, rest. You've earned it. Your ancestors would be proud. They survived winters far worse than this with far less comfort. They passed their knowledge down to you. Someday you'll pass it to your children. The chain continues. The struggle continues, but so does the triumph. Sleep well, night. Sleep warm. Sleep deep. Tomorrow is coming, but tomorrow can wait. Tonight you are safe. Tonight you are warm. Tonight you are alive. And that is enough. That is everything. Rest now. The cold will still be there in the morning, but so will you. Good night.